Happy St. George's Day. I hope you are all having an excellent time, especially if you live in England. In celebration of England's patron saint and everything which is English, I shall be taking a look at a series of English films, Wallace and Gromit. Wallace and Gromit are both the creations of Nick Park, an English animator who works for Aardman Studios, an English company based in Bristol, in England, obviously. Despite being short films, with no presence on the big screens of the cinema, well, other than Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which I will not be talking about, the characters are nevertheless recognisable in both Great Britain and abroad. The films are quintessentially English, which is why I shall be talking about them. So, boil the kettle full of French tears and brew the tea strong, and then we shall be on our way. And yes, there will be spoilers. The first time audiences were introduced to Wallace and Gromit was in A Grand Day Out in 1989, which started as a personal project by Nick Park, but was quickly picked up by Aardman once he was hired as an animator for the company. The identity and conventions of Wallace and Gromit are surprisingly well established in A Grand Day Out. The pictures of cheese on the walls, the celebration of simple pastimes such as tea drinking, the appearance of items such as duck matches, a joke on swan matches, and the electronics for Dog's Book. But most importantly, the dynamic between the two characters is set. Wallace is the eccentric inventor, mechanically gifted yet not very practical, living with his head somewhere in the clouds, while his pet dog Gromit is a far more pragmatic character, and definitely a down-to-earth type. Mentioning Planet Earth, we should really discuss the plot of A Grand Day Out. A Grand Day Out distinguishes itself early with an almost absurdist style of humour, and a free whimsical nature which isn't so strongly replicated in the other three films. The story starts with the mundane. A man and his dog are trying to decide how to enjoy a bank holiday Monday, and being appreciators of cheese, naturally decide it would be fun to build a rocket and go to the biggest cheese source in the solar system, the moon. From here, the film enters into pure fantastical whimsicalism, and Wallace, with the help of Gromit, builds a functional rocket out of materials in his basement. The audience happily accepts this premise, as the film takes a comical approach to everything. Nothing is meant to be taken seriously, and the humour reminds us that this is an eccentric comedy, where almost anything can happen.
No crackers, Gromit. We've forgotten the crackers.
Which is all very well, because when they get to the moon, not only is it made out of cheese, but it also has an atmosphere of oxygen, and a dispenser machine in charge of its upkeep. All these things are accepted without question, because of the tone, the nature, and the style of this wacky world, which our equally eccentric characters inhabit. A Grand Day Out is a fun, entertaining, and humorous film, and people at the time seem to have thought so as well. A Grand Day Out actually did rather well, and was actually nominated for Best Animated Short Film, but was beaten by Aardman's other stop-motion animation, Creature Comforts. However, as Nick Park animated one of the scenes in Creature Comforts, he still won from a certain point of view. The next film in the series was The Wrong Trousers, made in 1993. The animation is much smoother and definitely of a superior quality to its predecessor. The sets are also bigger and better. For the first time, we see the outdoors of the city which Wallace and Gromit live in, and it appears to be in the north of England. The improved animation and quality of the models in The Wrong Trousers helps the film take advantage of stop-motion animation's greatest appeal, the sense that the world and the characters are actually real. 2D and 3D computer animation both attempt to make the audience think that the world and the characters actually exist, and a great deal of effort can be spent trying to make sure everything looks like it has a physical existence. Stop-motion animation bypasses that problem, because everything, from the props to the models, are actually there in front of the camera, as tangible, physical creations. A Grand Day Out's models were kind of amateur-looking, and A Grand Day Out looks like a student's animation film, a very impressive one, but nevertheless a student one. The strange design of the models in the previous film helped only to distance the audience from the characters. However, in The Wrong Trousers, the animation is not only smoother, but the models have also been redesigned to be a kinder sight to the eye, and this makes connecting with the characters a far easier task. The film is also much easier to view due to the smoothness of the animations. Every scene is crafted beautifully, with fine detail in the environment. References to A Grand Day Out are scattered all over, There's also a reference to an animal Nick Park animated in Creature Comforts, and where there are no references, there are jokes, or humorously bad puns, such as the philosophy book read by Gromit at breakfast, called The Republic by Pluto, rather than The Republic by Plato. The Wrong Trousers is a completely different type of story to A Grand Day Out. A Grand Day Out was an adventure about going to a strange new world to bring back treasure with no real villain. Yes, the dispenser was antagonistic, but it wasn't truly a villain, as it didn't have any sinister intentions or villainous goals. The Wrong Trousers, however, does have a villain, a criminal mastermind known as Feathers McClaw, who just so happens to be a penguin, and I would just like to say that I am perfectly fine with this representation. A penguin who uses Wallace's latest acquisition from NASA to steal a diamond from the local museum. The story and its plot devices are set up early and expertly. The techno trousers and their functions are shown in the first 5 minutes of the film. The penguin is introduced within the first 10 minutes, and the plot picks up speed from then. Another thing which is introduced early on is the toy train on tracks that goes round the house, that in the final minutes of the film serves as the vehicle for the best chase scene in animation. I ask anyone who disagrees to watch The Wrong Trousers, and then to present me with a better animated chase sequence. Now, the chase sequence is definitely worth discussing in some detail. It is great not only because of the sensation of speed which the animators have carefully simulated, but also because it takes the opportunity to include comedy in the chase, by considering the crazy possibilities of the absurd and yet charming premise, such as changing the tracks one is riding upon, or laying down new tracks and taking a shortcut under the kitchen table. The chase is simultaneously exciting, absurd, and humorous, definitely something befitting for the world of Wallace and Gromit, and further establishing its identity as a series. Audiences and critics were both rather impressed with The Wrong Trousers, and it was awarded the Oscar for Best Animated Short Film in 1994. It also won 30 other national and international awards, one award for every minute of the film. Fair to say that Wallace and Gromit: The Wrong Trousers is one of the most successful animated shorts in this regard.
Well done, we did it!
By the time of the third instalment in 1995, a convention had been established, whereby the antagonists are wanted criminals and the main characters are in charge of a local business. This is a setup we see not only in A Matter of Loaf and Death, the next short film, but also in the feature-length film, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, although Victor is not actually a criminal. This is quite a good setup for short films like Wallace and Gromit. In A Grand Day Out and The Wrong Trousers, Wallace and Gromit do not really interact with the outside world until they have either decided on a plan or found themselves tangled up in the plans of a villain. In A Close Shave, we see Wallace and Gromit take a more active stance at the beginning of the story, and it is very entertaining. They are not sitting around thinking of what to do or waiting for trouble to find them. They play an active part in uncovering the story and its plot, while cleaning windows. Until A Matter of Loaf and Death, A Close Shave was the Wallace and Gromit short film with the most principal characters, not including the flock of sheep. We have 5 principal characters in Wallace, Gromit, Sean, Wendoline, and Preston. There is a wider variety of relationships, and the dynamics between each of these is engaging. The story differs from that of The Wrong Trousers, even though they look similar at first glance. But while The Wrong Trousers was more of a heist-orientated adventure, about capturing a criminal stealing a diamond, A Close Shave is more of a mystery thriller. We know that Preston and Wendoline are rustling sheep to sell wool from the beginning, but we don't realise until towards the end of the film that Preston is really the one in charge, and has been killing sheep for his dog food business, meaning that some of his actions, such as stealing the plans to Wallace's knit-o-matic machine, have to be reinterpreted as not being beneficial to the wool scheme, but instead to his dog food venture. For the first time in a Wallace and Gromit film, be it on the small or big screen, we see Wallace attracted to a member of the opposite sex. It is humorous, almost awkward in areas, relatable, and delightful to watch, and adds an extra layer to the story and enriches the viewing experience. But we do not only find a love interest in Wendoline, but also a reluctant villain who feels guilty about the acts she is doing, and this adds a bit more complexity to the conflict of the story. Speaking of complexity, A Close Shave is arguably the most intricate story involving not only 2 criminal operations, but also the framing of one of the central characters. Watching A Close Shave for the first time, one could be easily forgiven for not knowing what was going to happen in the next scene. While this is certainly not a complex film, or difficult to understand, it is a more entertaining story because of the increased depth of the story. In terms of animation, it is another win with even smoother movement, better models, and even more impressive sets and lighting. The chase sequence in A Close Shave is top-notch. It is exciting, and the humour remains as always amusing. A Close Shave was well received by critics and audiences alike, and like The Wrong Trousers, A Close Shave was awarded the Oscar for Best Animated Short Film in 1996. In 2008, the fourth short film was released. It was made after the production of Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and it is easy to tell the animation quality, the lighting, the production value, everything has been upgraded and improved. The setup is similar to that of the previous film. The villain is again a criminal, this time a serial killer, with a vendetta against bakers, and Wallace and Gromit happen to have started a bakery. A Matter of Loaf and Death is a Wallace and Gromit short film, but it feels different and not necessarily in a good way. One of the key things missing from the film is Wallace's love for cheese. This is a bizarre choice on the part of Nick Park. Throughout all three films, the appreciation of cheese, especially Wensleydale, was a cornerstone of Wallace's character, and a staunch constant, but A Matter of Loaf and Death forgets this fact. His new obsession is bread, and it makes no sense. Beyond crackers, Wallace never showed any great interest for bread, aside from jam toast. It is incredibly jarring, and the worst mistake Nick Park could have possibly made. What's worse is this could have been fixed by simply having Wallace be interested in his baking craft because he wanted to create a type of bread that would go excellently with cheese. That way, both his tastes could exist side by side, and it would not feel like an integral part of his character had been rejected. A Matter of Loaf and Death feels like a close shave, because all the key story elements from the third installment are present in this film. Wallace and Gromit have started a business. There is a criminal. Wallace has a love interest, again, and Fluffles is the reluctant villain who becomes a good guy later on. It feels a bit stale, not least because this is the third time Wallace has fallen in love, if we count Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and it is not so fresh to watch anymore. The humour, for the most part, remains amusing, and like the previous three films, there are plenty of laughs to be had. However, unlike the last three films, some of the comedy doesn't feel very natural. In the previous films, the comedy occurred in a more natural manner, and there was never a sense that the writers were really trying to be funny. In some cases, the opposite is true in A Matter of Loaf and Death, such as in one of the first scenes where Wallace and Gromit are throwing bread into letterboxes. I know most of my subscribers are American, so I should explain quickly that in England, we do not have letterboxes like this. In the making of A Matter of Loaf and Death, Nick Park explained that he had these letterboxes in the film because he thought it would be funny for Wallace and Gromit to throw loaves of bread into them, in spite of the fact that the English do not use such letterboxes. Another moment was this one, where Paella snorts like a bull, which I felt was out of character for her, but was certainly intended to be humorous. There are plenty of good things in A Matter of Loaf and Death, however. Paella is a great villain, manipulative and scheming, a type of villain not seen in previous Wallace and Gromit films. She is evil, easy to hate, and has a genuinely funny motivation for her actions. I definitely think she is a good and natural Wallace and Gromit villain. I know I said it feels like a close shave, however in terms of tone it is rather different. It is not a crime mystery like A Close Shave. Instead, it emulates the mood of a horror thriller, and some of the scenes rip tropes out of horror films for the purposes of both comedy and building tension. In fact, A Matter of Loaf and Death really does have a darker edge than the other three films. For the first time, characters actually die, the villain and a baker at the beginning of the film. Both perish in a humorous manner, but nevertheless this is something new for Wallace and Gromit, and is darker than expected. A Matter of Loaf and Death also has a comical fight scene, the most violent scene in the Wallace and Gromit franchise. The ending of A Matter of Loaf and Death raises a lot of questions about the future of Wallace and Gromit. There is a second romance in the film, and that is between Gromit and Fluffles, and at the end of the story, Fluffles decides to live with Wallace and Gromit. This is an unorthodox ending for a Wallace and Gromit film, because all the previous endings have seen life return to a comfortable status quo, while this ending has attached a third character to the Wallace and Gromit world, who will have to be accounted for in the next film. Of course, it is possible we will not see another Wallace and Gromit film. Although Nick Park has admitted that he is always thinking of the next adventure when he finishes a Wallace and Gromit film, Peter Sallis, the actor who voiced Wallace in Wallace and Gromit, died in 2017. Rest in peace, good sir. So it is possible that A Matter of Life and Death might be the last Wallace and Gromit film we see. It is a shame, but on the other hand, we have 3 very good films, and a good 4th one, and we should definitely be thankful for these. It will be a historic day when English animation creates 2 new characters who will be able to rival the fame of Wallace and Gromit. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day.